Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Friday morning webinar. I know that you've been looking forward to it all week. My name is Izzy, and I'm going to be talking to you today about our brand new sales report. So before I begin, I just wanted to let you know that should you have any questions as I'm going along, please feel free to ask. There's an instant messaging button at the top of your screen, so if you have any questions about what I'm talking about, one of my colleagues will be able to answer them for you. So we're talking about the sales report today. It's the first of its kind on the Coast system, and it's available now, so it's up and running. If you're a Coast user already, then it's there for you, ready and waiting. And if you're not a Coast user, then first of all, you should be, and as soon as you are, it will be there for you. So before I show you the report and its different sections, I just wanted to begin by explaining some of the theory that went into making the report. So at its core is the widely known sales cycle model. We wanted to use something that was going to be known already to lots of people, so that it was can be a really seamless introduction into your development processes or your recruitment processes already. We didn't want to bombard you with all kinds of complex psychometric models that you would have to learn. It's something that should be familiar to most of you. And so the sales cycle essentially means that regardless of the product or service that's being sold, research shows that successful sales tend to follow roughly the same pattern of stages. So starting with establishing the relationship in the top right-hand corner there, we move on to recognizing the client need, forming a creative solution, moving on to delivery and closing of that sale, so that's pitching and getting the key stakeholder buy-in, and then moving on to following up on retention and maintaining that really positive relationship. And so depending on the organisation, an employee might be responsible for all of these stages, some of them, or maybe even just one of them. In bigger organisations, for example, it might be that you have whole teams of people that are just for the establishing the relationship section. And then once they have those warm leads and once they've got people on board, they pass it over to their colleagues who look at finding the right solution for them. But when we look at real people, we see that they tend to be stronger in some areas and weaker in others. So what we wanted to do with this report is to use psychometrics and our knowledge of the influence of personality in business to learn about where a person's preferences and hesitations lie in 4 key sales personality areas, and then map these onto the sales cycle that everyone's familiar with. By doing so, we identify firstly the already strong areas, and this is really important for recruitment and development, for looking for people who will already be a good fit for a sales role, for hiring new people or for promoting people that we already have. But also, and perhaps more importantly, is looking for the key areas for growth. So the information in this report, particularly the information at the end of the report, can be used for targeted development and therefore improved sales skills. So the first of our 4 sales personality quadrants is grit. It's a really good one, and it's my favourite one. And it refers to a person's overall attitude to sales. So someone who scores highly in this area would be someone who believes that they can thrive under pressure. They're not fazed by having tight deadlines or difficult targets to reach. They feel that they work best when they're in a competitive environment. It's also someone who remains resilient in the face of a challenge or setbacks. So they don't take it too personally if they don't win a sale. They can get back up, get back on the horse, and carry on being motivated to get where they need to go. It's also someone who is optimistic and positive about their role, so someone who comes into work and is feeling strong and is ready to get going. It's that whole kind of resilient attitude is what we're looking for here. This is a particularly interesting one, and it's been in the media a lot recently because of some great research conducted by Angela Duckworth and her team. And so here you can see that there is a blog post on our website, which you are welcome to have a look at, and in that blog post is a link to Angela's TED Talk, which is really worth a watch. There's going to be another webinar coming soon where we delve really deeply into grit and how it's emerging as a really crucial aspect of learning and success. But for the purposes of this webinar, Angela got the idea when she was teaching maths to secondary school students, and she found that her brightest children in the classes were not necessarily the ones who were achieving the highest maths scores at the end of the year. So she started thinking about what was it then? What was it that was making the difference between people who were successful and people who were not so successful in her class? So what she did was study thousands of individuals across contexts, so from military personnel to teacher training, spelling bees, a whole range of contexts. And rather than what we may have thought would be accurate, so things like IQ, social poise, confidence, good looks, all these things, the significant factor that emerged as a good predictor of success across all of the situations was grit. So it's this stamina, long-term goal focus, and essentially someone's perseverance day in, day out that was predictive and that led to their success. This was really encouraging, and the kind of most exciting part of her research is that she emphasized that grit isn't fixed. So what we can do is by instilling a culture that values perseverance in our organizations, where individuals see setbacks not as failures, where they don't take them on as personal failures, but see them as opportunities to learn, can increase people's grit. And by increasing their grit, we therefore increase success. But grit alone isn't enough. There are 3 other key personality sales quadrants. And so the first one, or the second one that I'm going to be talking about, is empathy. So empathy looks at how a person builds and maintains good sales relationships with their clients. So someone who has a high score in this area would be someone who believes themselves to be someone who is good at building rapport, they're good at building trust with new people, they feel socially confident, so in new situations that they might be unfamiliar with, they still feel at ease with new people, and they're quick to make new relationships and new positive relationships. But also more specific to sales is that they also are really good at creating that desire in their new clients. So they're good at getting people excited about whatever they're talking about, and they're good at getting people on board. The third quadrant we've called focus, and this is the section, so after you've got someone, you've established a relationship and they're interested in what it is you have to say, your products or your services, this is the part where you are really listening and finding out where their need is, and then forming a creative solution. So someone who has scored highly in this area would have a structured approach to problem solving. They might have a creative part of them which is good at finding creative solutions rather than just going by the book. But also they're able to maintain pace in the sales cycle. So they're keen to keep things moving. They don't get too bogged down in highly detail-focused aspects. They're sort of ready to keep the whole thing moving and get it passed on to the next part of the sales cycle and get those sales closed. So the last quadrant here is appetite, and this maps more closely onto the last part of the sales cycle. So a high score in this area would indicate that a person is particularly good at closing the sale. They're really good at that kind of last stage, the pitching to stakeholders and getting that sale kind of locked down. So someone who is high in this area would have, or believe they have, effective influencing skills. They're good at negotiating. They have a high profit awareness, and they're kind of end goal motivated. So they find motivation in accomplishing targets. They're striving to meet those goals. And they can be assertive when appropriate, so they know what they want and they know how to get it, and they're good at getting it. So that's our sales model described in brief, the 4 quadrants there. So the report itself then, you can see the front page here. It's used in conjunction with our new off-the-shelf report. So that's the core one, which is 21 scales, and the enhanced one, which is 30 scales. The enhanced one will be slightly more sophisticated in that, simply because the algorithms that are kind of doing the mechanics behind the report have more information to draw on. So your respondents will have filled in more information about themselves, so we have a richer source of data to draw on there. But the core one is great as well. It's quicker for your respondents to go through if that's an important thing for you, and it still maintains a really good level of information, so that one's absolutely fine. The report can also be generated from your bespoke reports, but that would require a little bit of input from us. So because the scores are based on particular scales, we would need to ensure that you have got the right ones in there so that this report can be generated. So should you want to create your own bespoke report using the CAL library, that's absolutely fine. We would just have to check that you've got all the right ones in there before you go ahead and send it out to your respondents. So you can see from the front of the page that this report is to be used by the individual's line manager or recruitment team. It can also be used, and indeed should be used, for feedback with the person, but it's not really designed to be or appropriate to be handed directly over to them. We have a brand new personal feedback report, which is perfect for that if you want something to give them, which has some really good information and useful information for them. But this one is specifically to be used by the line manager or similar people like that, to be used in conjunction with the individual but not handed over directly. So this is the first of two main sections of the report, and you can see the graphic on the front page is the one that you'll be familiar with by now from this morning. And it's essentially a visual representation of where the individual falls on the 4 quadrants. So it's a really, really quick way to see exactly where the person is falling. They might be a kind of all-rounder and be sort of pretty good at all of them, or they might feel really confident in one and then not so much in the others. But this is an immediate way to see how your respondents are looking. So if you use the one in front as an example, you can see straight away that this person has less of an inclination towards the appetite aspects of a selling role, but is strong on the focus side, the creating solutions. The total sales score that you see below combines the information above and looks at a person's overall style and approach. And so it's important to mention here that this isn't based on ability tests, and it can change with time, and indeed should change with training. So this is looking at a person's style and indicates how easily they could adopt what we would consider successful sales behaviours. So we're looking at their approach as it is now, and this measure here is looking at how easily we think that they'll pick up the sales behaviours that we deem to be successful. It's not saying whether someone is a good or bad salesman. So the kind of thing that would feed into this is if someone is already highly profit motivated, for example, that would go into this, or if someone feels that they have particularly high influencing skills, those are all the kind of things that go into there. And because this tool is designed to be a development tool as well as helping hiring decisions, the aim here is to find the parts of the cycle that the individual feels less suited to and to target these areas for informed development. So we're not just looking for good and bad salespeople, we're looking at where we can make people better and make people more all-round. So the second page on the right there is a kind of more static page, and this is important for people who haven't been in today's webinar, and it has some information about each of the 4 quadrants, so that once you've had your initial look and you can see that, for example, someone is really high on grit, the second page is to say, okay, well, what does that mean? And there are some sort of tangible examples of the kind of behaviour you would then expect to see in that person when they're either in the role or once you've hired them in or moved them into the team. So the second part of the report, the second section, is really where it differs from the other ones that you see on the market. And so here you can see that for each quadrant there is a deeper level of interpretation and insight into their strengths and development points in sales. So this taps into the unique and dynamic aspects of personality, and what we didn't want to do with this report is just say, give you information that just says, okay, this person is a grit person or this person is a focused person. We wanted to give you a deeper insight, and we know that there are different ways an individual may bring strength to each quadrant depending on their style, and this is where you find that out. So you get 2 much deeper insights about the person. So if someone has scored particularly high or feel that they're particularly strong in one aspect of grit or 2 aspects of grit, that would come out here, and then you also get an example of something that they might not be so suited to, or they might not be matched so well for that aspect. So this slide follows on a little bit from what I was saying on the last one, and for people who are more familiar with psychometrics or have a more psychometrics background, you'll be aware of the type-based approach to personality questionnaires versus the trait-based approach. And this report is really great because it harnesses the advantages of both. So a type factor approach where we put people in kind of different types of personality. There are all kinds of ones all over the market, but this one, it's the 4 types of appetite, focus, empathy, and grit. And so the great thing about that is that it's immediately easy to understand. You don't have to require trained interpreters. You can see almost straight away where your person is falling. It's kind of visually attractive and really easy to understand. But where reports that are only type-based models kind of fall down is that you lack a kind of specificity to your data. So the in-depth look pages that we see in the second part of the report cover that. So you've got some more precise or trait level information there. So you really can have a deeper understanding of that person and where they're different to someone else. So if we had an only type-based approach, then you could have 2 people that were both really high on grit, but apart from that, you wouldn't know much about them. Whereas the second part of this report really would go in and you could see, well, this person's good at grit in this way, and this person is also good in grit, but in this way. So finally, some points on when to use the report. It's not just good for individual, it can also be used to inform team strategy. So if you're having a bit of a shake-up in your sales team, it might be that your sales team is slightly underperforming and you're not sure why, or they're performing really, really well, but you want to kind of capitalize that and find out what it is that they're doing really well and how they could be even better. So if you get your sales team to complete this questionnaire and you generate the reports from there, you can find out kind of what type of sales team they are. Is it that you have lots and lots of people who are really good at the empathy side, they're really good at getting people on board and getting people excited about their product and service, and then they might also be quite good at finding them great solutions. But actually there's less people who are motivated by closing those sales, or they might be that actually pitching the last idea is where people have more hesitations. So rather than sort of going in blind and trying to train everyone up on every aspect of the sales cycle, you can use this report to really nail down exactly where you should be spending your resources so that you can do development within your teams, but more economically. It's also really valuable to be used in recruitment. So when used in conjunction with other personality reports, or especially with ability tests, it's a really good report to build up that really detailed picture of the individual, and you can get more information about how you think that they're going to be behaving once they're in the role, what kind of salesperson they're going to be. Maybe you already have used it on your team and you're lacking some people who have that sort of focus side, and so you're looking for someone who is really good at that. So during interview, you can use this to say, okay, well, we can see that we think you're going to be like this. Is this true? That kind of thing. And finally, it's a smaller point, but the balanced approach that it takes to the sales cycle doesn't promote one type above another. So what we wanted to do with this report is to kind of emphasize that you want someone to be or develop people into kind of all-round salespeople so that they feel confident at every stage of the sales cycle. So a high total sales score, that score I was talking about before, isn't achieved by being spectacularly good at one and then not being so strong on the others. You want them to be balanced across the board. And what the report does in this report is that it kind of shows you what you're already confident with and what you have a good job match to, and tells you how to capitalize on that, but also highlights where you maybe should be spending more of your time for development. So I think that's kind of everything I wanted to say about the sales report today. We're going to be having some more in-depth webinars about all of our reports at a later stage. We also have another webinar next week on Thursday, which is going to be about the onboarding report. But I hope that this was useful to you, and I hope that you're as excited about the new sales report as we are. I hope that you also have a lovely weekend. Thank you.